Greetings, fellow viewers. My name is Pastor Trust Nowike of Christ-Centered Ministries. There is this question people often ask me, and probably if you're watching and you're a pastor, they must have asked you that same question. And the question is polygamy a sin? Is polygamy a sin? That's the question that people have often asked me. And it's a question that sometimes you might be thinking that the answer to it is yes or no. But if you want to follow the yes or no approach, you might end up not answering the question well. First, polygamy is a form of marriage whereby a man gets married to more than one wife. And monogamy is a kind of marriage or a type of marriage whereby a man is married to a woman. So for us to be able to understand whether or not polygamy is a sin, we first have to understand what is the concept of marriage according to the Bible. Now, I want us to begin by reading Ephesians chapter 5 verse 31. I'm reading from the King James. Ephesians chapter 5 verse 31. It says, "For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and the two shall be one flesh." He said, "For this cause shall a man and a woman, or a man leave his fathers and mother, and be joined unto his wife." He didn't say a man joined to his wives. He said a man joined to his wife, which means that by implication, the man is supposed to marry one wife. So he says a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, meaning one wife. A man is supposed to be married to a single woman. Now let's look again at verse 33 of that same Ephesians chapter 5. He said, "Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, and even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband." Now when you look at the way Ephesians continues in Paul continues in presenting this issue to the church in Ephesus, you will discover that he keep emphasizing wife and husband. He doesn't talk about husband and wives. He talks about wife and husband, meaning that in Paul's intention, he expected the husband to have one wife. Now if you go further, looking at 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 2, it was Paul again writing to Timothy. He said, "A bishop then must be blameless, and a husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, and of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach." So my focus in this verse, 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 2, is the husband of one wife. Paul was very specific here. He says a bishop, which is an elder, must be a husband of one wife. Understand that he uses the word "must" to show a kind of imperative, to show that it is an imperative that a bishop should have one wife. So he said the bishop should be a husband of one wife, a husband of one wife, which means that in Paul's writing, his intentions were that marriage is supposed to be between a man and a woman, not between a man and women. Let's go further. We also see in Paul again writing in that same First Timothy chapter 3 verse 12. He says, "Let the deacons be the husband of one wife, ruling their children and their own houses well." You discover that Paul was painting a picture of leadership in the church, and he was giving out the qualities and what qualifies a man to be a leader in the church. And he says a bishop must have one wife. He goes further to also qualify that a deacon must have one wife. Now Paul again writes in 1 Timothy 5 verse 9. He said, "Let not a widow be taken into the number under 80 years old, having been the wife of one man." Now he also emphasizes the fact that a woman is supposed to marry only one man. Now one thing stands out here. Paul was talking about the people that the church should help. And he was saying that the people the church should help are women who are widows and they are above they are from the age of 60 and above, and he says any other woman who is below that age should not be taken into that group. But the women that should be taken into the group of those the church should help, they should be people who were married to one man. In Titus chapter 1 verse 6, Paul again writing to Titus, he said, if any be blameless, the husband of one wife, having faithful children, not accused of riot or unruly. Paul was also emphasizing the fact that a man ought to be married to one wife. Now, in all of these scenarios where we've seen Paul presenting the situation of marriage as being between a man and a woman, or a single man and a single woman, we don't see a place where Paul either talks about a man getting married to two women as sin, but rather we see Paul painting a picture of how a Christian marriage should look like. That a Christian marriage should be between one man and one woman. One man and one woman. Now, when you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 7, where Paul again, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, where Paul again is dealing with the issue of marriage. He discovered that Paul said that, and unto the married I commend, yet not I, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband. He was addressing the issue of divorce, and Paul went ahead to emphasize that the man should not leave the woman if he had gotten married to the woman when they were still unbelievers. And he also emphasized that the wife should not leave the husband if they got married when they were still unbelievers. Now, I have noticed that in many cases, the issue of polygamy often comes with people who are not believers. And as these people come to Christ with their polygamous home, I have noticed also that some preachers have preached that if you, or have advised people who were polygamists before they came to Christ, that they should go and send away the other wives and only keep the first wife. But I think that this advice is not scriptural, in that if these people got married before coming to Christ and they already have their wives, they are not supposed to send away the women, because they have a responsibility over these women. If you look in the days of old, people got married to more than one wife, and it was seen as a normal thing. There was nothing wrong with it. So what I am saying here is that in as much as what is prescribed to be correct Christian marriage is one man getting married to one woman, if a believer has more than one wife, it is not a sin. If a believer has more than one wife, it is not a sin. I am not in effect encouraging believers to go get other women, but what I am saying is that if a believer has more than one wife, it is not a sin. If you are a believer and you are not yet married, don't start thinking of going to get married to two women. What is it you'll be looking for in two women? I want to believe that it is the kind of probably dysfunctional marriages that sometimes push people into going to look for the second wife. Or sometimes a man gets married to the first wife and the first wife is not able to have children, and then the man starts thinking about the second wife. And I've also discovered that the reason for which some people get into polygamous marriages is because they were pushed into it by circumstances. Probably their families are pressurizing them to have another woman, probably to give them a male child, or probably to give them children and all of that. So if somebody, a man or a woman, a man finally succumbs to such pressure, even if such a person is a believer, it is not a sin. But it is advisable as believers, scripturally, that a man should be married to one wife. A man should be married to one wife. But if a man gets married to more than one wife, it is not a sin. It is not a sin. There is nowhere stated in the Bible that anybody who is married to more than one wife is sinning. Nowhere that is stated in scripture. Now, when you look at those passages that I have stated before in relation to Paul's writing and what he said concerning a man getting married to one wife, you discover that Paul was addressing the issue of leadership, and it actually had to do with family well-being, which implies that everybody should obviously have known that there is no way there could truly be peace in polygamous homes. There's always trouble in polygamous home. Anybody who has any idea of polygamy will know that there's always trouble in polygamous home. So therefore, in that light, Paul was instructing believers that you should be a husband, that for you to be a leader in the church, you should be a husband of one wife, because if you're a husband of one wife, the rate at which you could have disorder in your family will be minimized. But if you are a husband of more than one wife, there could be a lot of family marriage dysfunction, or you could obviously be a victim of a dysfunctional marriage. So what we are in essence saying here is that the ideal and scriptural way of marriage is that a man should be married to a woman, that a husband has one wife. But if a believer has more than one wife, it is not a sin, and such a believer should not go and divorce the other women if he got married to those women before he became a believer, or even if he got married to those women when he was already a believer. He should not divorce the other women, for it is not a sin. Thank you so very much. I am Tross Nyowike of Christ Centered Ministries. Bye bye.